Okay. Rakesh, nice to not quite see you, but you got your hand up. Would you like to say something?
Oh, hello there. Hi, yeah, sorry,
Hi
I've
there.
just
Nice to see you.
yeah, nice to see you. Yeah. Yeah, I've got a well, yeah, hope you've had a good summer and nice to see you again. Yeah, I've got a bit of an unusual one here, which is I recently found out a few days ago that a very close relative has become very seriously unwell with a disease, and the medication is not working, and he may only have a few months left to live, which is deeply shocking and disturbing to the entire family. Is greatly respected by everyone, really. And I was just wondering, based on your own knowledge of the suttas, what the Buddha's actually said, and obviously based on your own understanding, whether there's anything you think that can possibly help. For example, I'm aware of two suttas, the Girimananda Sutta and the Ratana Sutta, that are said to be, potentially useful to recite or to hear in this type of situation. Also, from my own experience, I recall many years ago taking part in a transfer of merit ceremony at the end of a 10-day meditation retreat, and I bore a particular unwell close relative in mind during that ceremony, and I later on found out that that relative was healed overnight. These mysterious things can happen. Anyway, I just wanted to ask if you had any thoughts.
I can't I can't vouch for things like transference of merit or anything like that. It's not really a part of anything that I've had anything to do with. Um, I Who is it we're trying to help? Rakesh.
Mhm.
Who is it we're
Uh,
trying to help?
do you want me to identify who the person is?
No, 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 no.
No, no. Okay, all right.
Understand the nuance of the question. Who is
Right.
it that wants to be helped?
Maybe you're alluding to maybe am I trying to help myself?
Is that so? I mean, ultimately, who else can we help? It is. I'm sure you're aware that the Buddha himself.
Yeah.
Well, we don't say he passed away, do we? We say he entered parinibbana, but
Mhm.
he died. Yeah, in the sense of the material support for the arising of consciousness could no longer function. And we call that death. First noble truth. The fact that somebody is born means it's inevitable that they're going to die. And in between that, we have all the insult of old age, decay, and death. We have all all the grief, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and despair sandwiched between birth and death. We have the ignominy of losing the things we love, including other people, of having to endure union with the things we do not love, and on a regular basis, we experience not being able to get what we want. In short, the five groups subject to clinging are suffering. So even at the ultimate level, even when we get right down into the component parts of experience, we see that there is nothing to grasp onto as being me or mine or myself. So putting one side the idea of being able to heal people, and dependent on who it is and the situation, it might be you know that might actually be counterproductive because everyone has to experience the full range of what it is to be a human being, including all the indignities. If we want to make a thorough assessment, a complete assessment of what a human being is like and whether it's worth it for future reference, then we need to experience everything. And so putting the healing thing to one side, ultimately, it's our task is to explore our conscious experience, to come to understand it, to understand how every component part of it is transient, unsatisfactory, and not self, and be liberated from the ignorance that causes greed and hatred. And as far as I understand it, that is the one and only task of the Buddha's teaching. Okay, now there might be subsidiary concerns like developing loving kindness and developing compassion, and that may therefore manifest as actions in the world in order to be of aid to other people and to be helpful and to be kind, to be supportive. And in that respect, maybe if someone is given over to healing techniques, that may be some aspect of what they do, but we can't lose sight of the goal of the Buddha's teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help, Rakesh?
It actually really, really does help. It really does help.
We can't help it if other people don't get that. You know, we can't expect other people to look at it from that perspective. And I'm sure there is a lot of, you know, genuine grief and sorrow and lamentation at what is unfolding for this dear family member. And it's no lack of compassion, however, when it's our turn, when we as meditators are faced with the death or the serious illness of a family member, how are we going to deal with it? That's the question. That's the question for a forum like this. Are we looking at it through a Buddhist lens? Are we looking at it from the point of view of the First Noble Truth? Are we looking at it from the point of view of rebirth? Are we looking at it from the point of view of being mindful of grief, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and despair? Of being aware of the inherently unreliable, untrustworthy, unsatisfactory nature of existence? It's treacherous, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even the best of us go.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I could have, you know, I'm just so resisting the reality that I'm just not thinking about it in those terms yet, because I'm just not ready to, and I'm fighting the reality that is.
Well, you'll
And I
suffer
get
then,
so,
won't you? You'll
yeah,
suffer
yeah,
accordingly.
yes,
Of course, we do loving kindness, firstly towards ourselves, and then to our, you know, people that we respect, our family, friends, neutral people, and people that we struggle with. We can develop compassion in the same way. But that has to include the realities. Otherwise, Rakesh, we're just playing at this. If you're not actually prepared to look at it through the Buddhist lens, you're just playing.
mm-hmm.
It won't lead to liberation. It won't lead to transformation. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Did anyone have other observations about that? Mark, you got your hand up. No?
A very different question, Paul.
Oh, okay. Let's just first check.
Yeah, sure.
Anybody else got any other aspects of that they wanted to talk about? Shall we move on? Mark, please go ahead.
Hello, Paul.
Hi.
At the beginning of this evening, you gave a list of descriptors that we could label experience with: heat, coolness, etc. And in the past, in previous meetings, I've heard you mention motion a few times, and I wondered if you could perhaps share a few examples of.
Did I?
Yeah. I'm fairly sure of that. I just wondered if you could share a few examples of experience that we could label as motion, please.
Yeah, I don't normally mention, because if you actually break motion down, you'll see that there's no motion at all.
I think I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I wondered if it was either like motion as a perception or
The distending quality, the sort of the sort of like not the hardness or the softness, but the sort of, you know, that kind of pressure, perhaps, would be a better description of it. You know, like a door might be, you know, you might hold a doorknob and it'll be hard, but that's not what I mean. It's more like the force that is it, the force that is used, that kind of like distending quality. Because like when you watch the breathing process, we perceptually we say the breath is moving, might be making like a figure of eight motion, something like that. But then you start breaking down. If mindfulness is there and clear comprehension is there and concentration is there, you can start breaking that process down into subdivisions, and then subdivisions of the subdivisions, and you realize that there is just this fleeting moment of tactile sensation, let's call it that, which arises and ceases where it is. It does not move. Then there is a subsequent iteration, which is self-similar, meaning it's not the same iteration. It is a new iteration, which is occurring. It arises and passes away. And the mind is conditioned by the arising of that sensory contact. The mind applies a label, the perception, and each iteration receives a separate little perception. And so when it's weaved all together, we say, oh, the breath's moving. Yeah. So each little iteration has this little distending quality, this little push, but it's not actually moving anywhere.
Thanks, Paul. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
No need to think about it, mate. We can actually observe our experience.
No, absolutely. Thank you for clearing that up for me.
Yeah, not at all. If anyone's interested, I could do a complete, very quick description of the 6 sensory fields, and that is an extraordinarily complete way of identifying the components of experience. But we'll see what other questions are around first. Mark, thank you. Was there any subsequent question, or are you happy?
I have a few, but I'm happy to share the forum for other people to ask questions.
Okay, well, you're always welcome to put your hand up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Sally, nice to see you. How are you?
Hello. I've got a completely different question.
Okay.
On something I've been thinking about for a little while. So I started reading one of the books from the centre.
Good. Buddhist character analysis, yes. Okay.
And I'm really interested in it. And I think I've been thinking a lot about ego and personality, and the word used character analysis rather than personality. And I wanted to know, would you suggest that personality suggests more of a sort of the self than the character analysis side of things? Is that deliberately chosen word, do you think? And if we do use this book to help us, if you think it's useful, is it helpful in moving us on in our practice to know which type of person we are, or what we're most like in different situations? Sorry, that's a lot.
That's okay. That's okay. I think we can never describe the self, because there's no such thing.
Yeah.
So what we're describing are various ideas. They're descriptors of a collection of states that have the nature to arise and pass away. So there's nothing to cling to, nothing permanent. The very notion of a self is that it's something that doesn't change. So on the conventional level, in terms of everyday life, that's absolutely fine. So I'm the same person I was when I came out of the womb. I'm the same person that I was when I went to first school. I'm the same person that I was when I went to work, you know. But when you actually get down and look at it really, really closely, there is nothing that persists through time exactly the same, or persists unchanged. And so when we look at things very, very closely, which is what we're doing with insight wisdom, we discover there is no self. There are just these ongoing collection of traits, habits, tendencies, some of those tendencies are very strongly embedded in the flow of experience and will come out as ways of, primarily as ways of dealing with suffering. And so that's where we start to get this idea of character analysis. Like some people, in order to deal with the problem of suffering, habitually tend towards trying to find the pleasant, trying to find the agreeable, to get away from the suffering by getting nice experiences. And we'd say they're greedy types because they're anxious for, they're trying to gain experience. And then you have what we call, in inverted commas, the hate types, because their tendency is to deal with the problem of suffering by getting rid of the unwanted. So the polar opposite. Yeah. And then you have the confused type. Their way of dealing with suffering is to stand on one leg and scratch their head and sort of not quite know where they are or what to do. So we have these primary ways that we tend towards, like my primary habitual way is to tend towards trying to find pleasant experiences.
Does that mean you're more of a craving type then?
Craving type, yeah, greedy craver type. And yeah, so I tend to be a little bit plump, you know, whereas a hate type will tend to be, you know, quite rakish and quite a lot thinner and a lot more, you know what I mean? It's just, it's not an absolute, because we've all got all the qualities, but it's just like there's a main tendency to deal with the problem of suffering. And
so do you think it is helpful to sort of use that as a guide to help you look at the way you are and how you deal with situations?
I would say don't put any prescription on it. Don't, if that's the right use of that word, don't limit yourself. When you just practice mindful noting without limits, you just practice noting whatever's taking place, it becomes abundantly apparent what your main tendencies are. Yeah. Because what can happen is inadvertently the greedy type, the craver type personality will invert it and believe that they are a hate type, and what they have to do in order to balance off is to take more pleasure in life. And the hate type personality will invert it and claim that they're a greedy type and think, well, they got to do without even more and give up and be even more austere.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really important and helpful to get guidance. But really, if you're just practicing mindful noting, you can't kid yourself.
Yeah. Because I suppose there's always the thing that you might cling to what type you think you are. Is that another possibility?
Yes. It's amazing what the ego, in inverted commas, will cling to in order to survive.
I can see that.
So yeah, but I don't think you can really come to any harm, and I think it is helpful and useful. Is it the most important aspect of the Buddha's teaching? For me personally, I don't teach much of that. I think people have a tendency to attach to labels anyway, and like you say, it might be more of a temptation to create more labels about ourselves and then cling to them. But I think it's in terms of understanding the human tendency to try to deal with the problem of suffering in these ways, I think it is really, really helpful.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Yeah, okay. I found it. Thank you.
Good. Lucy, hello.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, just off the back of Sally's question, I've never understood why the three kind of flip sides of each of those are not really spoken about much. It might typically be categorized as a crave type or a hate type, but not a faith type or an intelligent type. I just wondered, is there a reason for that?
Maybe somebody else knows the reason. Like I say, I don't tend to dwell on it terribly much. But the positive, you're quite right to point it out, and we should mention the positive aspects. So the greedy or craver type tends to be more faithful, and that's their positive attribute. The hate type, in inverted commas, tends to be, their positive aspect is intelligence. So really, like in terms of intelligence, it's seeing what the genuine flaw in something is. Yeah. So that's a mark of intelligence. Whereas what the hate aspect is just trying to get rid of everything it finds displeasing. The intelligence type is trying to get rid of that which is genuinely flawed. It's looking to get the genuine flaws out of get the bugs out of the system, so the system works better. And the faithfulness of the greedy type is just that willingness to go with the flow. It's to let life breathe and live and do what it wants to do, rather than thinking I've got to impose, my will upon it. So it's very faithful. It's going to let life do what it wants to do. And the positive aspect of the confused type is speculation, the capacity to speculate. We all need a little bit of speculation in order to get onto the path. And so that's actually in context, is deemed a very good quality, although we also know with speculation that it can lead to incredible confusion. So it has to be treated with intelligence. But yeah, those are the three positive attributes: the faithfulness, intelligence, and the speculative aspect. Why don't we? Your question is why don't we hear much about it? Because I probably don't talk about it that much, and it's not a huge I have a problem with it. It's just, honestly, it doesn't. I mean, it's helpful in terms of teaching somebody. It can be helpful to know that they're a faithful greedy type, or they tend to want to get rid of, in the way that you approach teaching them, perhaps. Certainly, you would encourage people with a lot of aversion to, eat a donut every now and then, and you perhaps suggest to the craver types that they don't do that. Perhaps that they pay more attention to their eating habits. So it can be helpful. Does that help, Lucy?
Yeah, it does. It didn't really. It was just a small. I just wondered it for a few years in the back of my mind. So it's not. It's not been a huge problem for me to not know. But yeah, no, that helps. Thank you.
There was a question in the box for the Wednesday Q&As, and about that, and I did indeed completely fail to answer it then as well. So I'm glad we got the opportunity to discuss it now. So I think it can be helpful. But, well, for me anyway, it doesn't really get to the top of the list of things I need to tell you. So. Oh, I just noticed people have put some. I don't tend to look at the stuff you write. I'll try now. Okay, nothing there I can answer, really. Mark, you have another question or a follow-up question?
Yeah, I do, Paul. Buddhism has been in the sort of global news in the last few months. I wondered if you came across any of the stories, but one was to do with the Buddha's relics in India.
Can you repeat that? Sorry, there was a bit of a break-up in the signal.
Sure. The Buddha's relics were due to be auctioned by Sotheby's recently. They were dug up in the early 1900s, apparently, and I think 80% of the find was distributed to Thailand and former Burma. But 20% of the find was given to the family that did the excavation. And so it was going to go on auction at Sotheby's recently, and it included apparently bone fragments of the Buddha, various artifacts, and 1,800 precious gems. But then the Indian government stepped in and threatened to sue Sotheby's, and so it was pulled from auction. But then I noticed in the news the following day there were various Buddhist monks from around the world saying that, you know, the Buddha wouldn't have minded, it's all anatta and that kind of thing. But there was just the argument that a find of that kind shouldn't be held by a private family, basically. Yeah. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah. Zero.
Yes. No.
I literally, it like, it's just circuses. Just doesn't matter. It's not important.
Sure.
At all. You know, I want everyone to get the maximum benefit from, you know, if people are interested in the Buddha's teaching. Well, my interest in the Buddha's teaching was always using it as a tool to overcome suffering and to realize the true nature of reality. Mm. And to my mind, there is no other purpose. And so, you know, and that through the development of this loving attention to reality, of exploring what it actually is, what it consists of, using the tools of the Buddha's teaching, you come to appreciate it in, well, I was going to say in all its mystery. You never get to the bottom of the mystery. And things like, who has, I mean, there's some guy somewhere just got some bones and some relics and whatever, and say, yeah, they're the Buddhas, yeah, there you go. That'll be 50 million pounds, please. You know, who knows? Who cares? It's like worrying about who won the FA Cup. Honestly, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
What matters is for anyone who's interested, who really wants to do something about the problem of suffering and to overcome suffering through insight, you've got the perfect opportunity. And just really encouraging everyone to focus on what's important and let go of what frankly isn't. So that's not personal, Mark, at all. It's just
no.
It's
absolutely.
I had no idea any of that was going on, and it doesn't interest me at all.
I hear you.
Yeah.
There was another story. Maybe I should just refrain from sharing that one. Well, I mean, it may be interesting in terms of the precepts and things. There were some Thai monks, I think they were quite senior, and they were entrapped by a young woman, and she extorted millions of pounds from them in Thailand.
How is that possible? They're monks. They haven't got any money.
You might be surprised. I think they must have been quite senior. But there was a big scandal, I think, in Thailand. And I know there's a big power struggle there between the various Buddhist sects, the royal family, and the Thai government. So I'm not sure what went on, but the outcome was that the Thai government wanted to introduce a 2-year prison sentence from now on for any monks that break the precept. So perhaps, yeah.
I mean, what interests me is the role that narratives play.
Yeah.
In all of this, what do we actually know?
Sure.
Has been going on? We live in this world of mass media, and we are routinely told stories about what's going on in the world. My discovery through practicing insight and the discovery of just how transient, ungraspable, conditioned and conditioning every component part of phenomena that goes to make up any experience is, came the realization that all narratives are false. They are not true. Truth cannot be contained within any story, any narrative, any data set, any description whatsoever. And what we have instead of truth is a sliding scale of falsehood, from the out and out completely false and inaccurate all the way to the relatively accurate, the least inaccurate statements about reality. And I would say the least inaccurate statements about reality are suffering, the causes of suffering, freedom from suffering, and the path leading to freedom from suffering. I think the Buddha's teaching represents the least inaccurate description of reality as you're ever going to find. And it works. So we are bombarded with all these narratives and stories, and it's so easy to fall into the trap of believing that these represent the reality of what is actually unfolding, and they're not. They couldn't possibly be. Some will be less inaccurate than others, but it's not truth. Truth is entirely available to everyone, but as soon as you pass light through a prism, you get this spectrum, and the truth of it is lost in the multiplicity that arises. So through the practice of mindfully noting what is actually taking place, you come to realize the futility of trying to hold up an absolute definitive narrative about the way the world is. And it's so freeing. It's so freeing not to be squished and squashed and pushed and pulled by these narratives that everyone else is trying to impose upon you. Because you know that reality is not like that. Like I say, some descriptions are less inaccurate than others. But it's recognizing that there are no definitive narratives, no definitive transcendent narratives. So that's what I got from that, Mark.
There you go. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Paul. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Not at all. But everyone has to find this out for themselves. If you persist with the ongoing exploration of your experience, if you break your experience down into its components, I think the 6 sensory fields that the Buddha taught are extraordinarily powerful. It represents an incredibly powerful way of doing that work. We have 6 senses. Remember that meditation is like the workout at the gym. As you develop your muscles, you get to use them the rest of the day too. And insight is not just for seated practice. We start to find it operating outside of seated meditation as well. We have 5 physical senses and mind, and so they represent the 6 sensory fields. So there's the sensory field of seeing, the sensory field of hearing, the sensory field of smelling, the sensory field of tasting, the sensory field of touching, and the sensory field of mind. So 6 things to remember, and within each of those fields, there are 3 perspectives that we look at: object, base, and consciousness. So each field has 3 elements to it. So with seeing, the sensory field of seeing, you have shape and color as the object, the sensitive matter of the eye that receives that sensory information, That's the base. And then you have the arising of seeing consciousness. Seeing consciousness only arises because there's an object and a base. So it's possible, therefore, to gain insight into the transient nature of shape and color, the transient nature of the eye base, and the transient nature of seeing consciousness. Plus, it's also possible to see the conditioned and conditioning nature of the object, of the base, and the consciousness. So with hearing, you have sound, you have the sensitive matter of the ear that receives that sensory information, and you have hearing consciousness, ear consciousness. And similarly with the other physical senses and with touch, you have the sensation of touch, heat, coolness, hardness, softness, and so forth. You have the sensitive matter of the body base itself, which receives that sensory information, and you have the arising of touching, body consciousness. And then you have the 5 physical senses, so 5 sensory fields, and then the 6th sensory field is a mental object, which could be a memory, a feeling, a perception, past moment of consciousness, thinking, all types of mental objects. You have mind itself, which actually acts as the base which receives that. And you have the arising of mind consciousness, which is the knowing of the mental objects. So just in the same way as with hearing, you have the object, which is the sound, and you have the hearing, which knows the sound. In the same way, you have a mind object, like a memory, and the mind that knows that memory, that is mind consciousness. And it's a little bit of a mouthful. It's a little bit difficult to get your head around it at first, but when you sit down and you just analyze your experience down into those 6 sensory fields, the whole world of ultimate reality and the Buddha's higher teaching just opens up beautifully. So if you're wondering what to do with the meditation once the mind is calm and quiet, it's just resting, allowing experience to arise, and noting what that experience is. And if it's a sound and there's hearing, then that's a sensory field of hearing. If it's tactile sensation, then that's the sensory field of touch. If it's a memory, a flurry of thinking, a worry, a daydream, then that's a mental object, and it's mind consciousness which knows that object. And if you keep on analyzing your experience down into those groups, you'll begin to recognize the mark of transience. You'll begin to recognize the ungraspability of that object because it is transient, and you'll see how conditioned and conditioning these components of experience actually are. You'll see, you'll clearly comprehend that if there's no hearing, there is no sound. If there's no sound, there's no hearing. If there's no mental object, there's no mind consciousness. If there's no mind consciousness, there's no mental object. Like I say, tangly to think about, but when you actually simply observe your experience with mindfulness and note what's taking place, all this starts to become really crystal clear. And that's the way to liberate the mind from clinging, attachment, and craving. It really is. So. Anyone have any thoughts about that? Questions, observations, considerations, concerns? Alex.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I finally have this time slot free on a semester, so I can go to your meetings now. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I have a question, but it's not about the six senses. If you want
Go
to
for
wait.
it. Oh, don't worry. I
But
got the information I needed across, so you're fine. Go for it.
yeah, thank you. So you said that all narratives are on a spectrum from completely false to like almost true, or like relatively true. What's
Least
the
inaccurate. Least inaccurate.
yeah, least inaccurate?
They're all on a
So
spectrum of inaccuracy.
yeah, yeah. And I want to ask, what part of the Buddhist teaching is still inaccurate?
Well, the very fact that it's a
And yeah,
description. The very fact that it's a description. I mean, you could call it call them the four noble descriptions. Yeah, they're as least inaccurate as you could get. So, I mean, they're you know, but it's like a photograph is not the living reality. You see what I mean?
yeah. And your description, your description of this narratives being on a spectrum reminded me of a qualm that I have with a lot of Buddhist communities, not with Alkana, but that say that Buddhism is the only true teaching or the only true spiritual path. And this was something that always really bothered me, even though I have no experience with any other spiritual path other than Buddhism. It's the only one that's ever worked for me, but it always really bothered me. And
Yeah. What do you think is going on there?
yeah,
Because I mean,
I
I
have no
completely
idea.
agree. Cannot possibly be so.
Yeah.
What do you think's going on there?
I have no idea, honestly. It always really bothered me because people who, teachers who seem to be really knowledgeable in meditation and who seem to be really knowledgeable in the Buddhist teaching, but were really dogmatic. And this was something that always bothered me.
Yeah, maybe that's the way the fetters on the first path are arising for those people. Attachment to the Buddhist teaching itself, reflecting their own the suggestion, the demand that only the Buddha's way, the Buddha's way is the only way, is a reflection of their own internal battle with their attachments, their attachment to rule and ritual, because that's where dogmatism comes from. Dogmatism comes from the denial of uncertainty. Life is inherently uncertain. This is why people cling to narratives, because you open the bonnet and you look behind the appearance of things and you go, oh my goodness, anything could happen at any moment. Life is inherently uncertain. And so the dogmatism comes from trying to reach a point of certainty, which is why you get, conflicts between different religions, because they can't both be true, right? So my one must be true, therefore yours must be false. And this is because people don't see the relative nature of all narratives. And this is why it drives conflict. But it's coming from a place of people feel uncertain and they want certainty. They think through gaining certainty, they will be happy, they'll be peaceful. But all it really doing is just suppressing the doubt and the uncertainty. And it's actually consuming them. It consumes people. And so they become very dogmatic and try to get everyone else to believe what they believe as a way of, bolstering themselves up. So it seems to me anyway, based on my training, that the first path, that's what you're battling, you're either battling with it in terms of an external set of rules and rituals, or you're dealing with the internal rules and rituals that you created since you were a little boy or a little girl in order to make sense and gain some control in the world. And all based around trying to cement the idea of self as an ongoing reality, and to, you know, construct this persona that's all part of it too. So maybe they're still caught in trying to create the persona of a spiritual being that they can call the self. There's a lot to it. So it depends, you know, because just because someone says that they're a Buddhist teacher doesn't mean they're necessarily very advanced. They might have a good intellectual grasp, but a good intellectual grasp of the teaching is like a mirror. A mirror gives you the illusion of depth. That's what it does, but it's all surface. And it doesn't emit light. It just reflects. So it's borrowed light. And that's what the intellect does. The depth, the true depth, comes from the other hemisphere of the brain. It comes from the right side of the brain, which is all about experience. It's experiencing. This is what the intellectual doesn't understand. And so that can be a major issue as well. So, but I think you're right, Alex. I think to say that the Buddha's teaching is the only way to realize truth is sadly lacking.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Yeah.
Thanks.
Ellen, hello.
You too, Paul.
Yeah, lovely to hear you. Ellen, hello.
Oh, hello. And hello, everybody. Six Sensory Fields. That was a lovely review. Thank you. Brought to mind a question I've always sort of had. At any moment in time, all those sensory fields exist. All of those potential.
Only one of them exists.
Well, right. I knew this is what we were going to get to. So, only one consciousness exists.
One object, one moment, one consciousness, one object and the knowing of that object.
The knowing of the object, one object and the knowing of the object. So there's the possibility of input from any, and we rotate, I guess. If I'm cooking, I need to pay attention to some. Yeah,
that's too. I can't think of the right word.
Theoretical.
No, it's not theoretical. It's like it's like the idea of cooking is a very mundane, conventional sort of task, isn't it?
Right.
But carry on. Sorry, I interrupted. Please carry on.
Yeah, no. Well, let me give you the one example that relates to being in the meditation chair. This has happened to me more than once. I own a Swatch watch, and for those in the group, if you have a Swatch watch, they have a particular tick, tick, tick noise. And I just found it very curious on a number of occasions. The tick, tick, tick noise is in my space. I have ears, and it's not that I hear it all the time. And then sometimes all of a sudden I'm hearing the tick, tick, tick of my watch. So I guess I'm coming to understand my only way of explaining that is that something else for the majority of time has caught my interest, is the way you describe it, that something catches our interest. And that's where what we are interested in, and we can note that. Then we go back to the beginning, and at some point, my tick 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 ends up being of interest. Anyhow, I don't know if there's a question, but
yeah. If we're looking at it purely in ultimate terms, in terms of the Buddha's higher teaching, this way of analyzing and deconstructing reality, looking at the fundamental components that go to make an experience up, we see that life is being rendered in real time. It is being constructed in real time. There are no conventional objects. There is just the construction of reality through the coming and going of these individual moments of an object and the mind that knows the object. That's all that's going on. I say all. It's an astonishing discovery.
Infinite mystery. Yeah.
Yeah, and the conventional reality of Ellen cooking a lovely meal in the evening is this wonderful cosmic play that has no fundamental reality. It's empty. It's not saying there's nothing there, because all the components that go to construct this moment are arising, but there is nothing permanent in any of it. It's all just the most fabulous show. It's just awesome. Just this.
It's just a flow. It's a stream. It's all these bits and pieces.
Yeah, and as one's mindfulness and one's concentration develop through each of the 4 paths, it starts to become very, very evident, very clear that this is all being rendered in real time. It's all being constructed from these tiny, tiny little fragment moments. And so, no, we're not always aware of sound. A sound arises, there's the conscious knowing of the sound, because there's the ear base. The 3 come together, that's sensory contact. A perception arises, ticking clock, or whatever it might be. All those various parts are conditioning and conditioned. They do a task in the overall construction of reality and cease instantly. And they may very well be replaced by a very similar moment of experience, but that is a new moment of experience. You cannot have old moments of experience. Each moment of consciousness is new. It arises, it does its job, it ceases. And in its arising, it conditions other things. In its ceasing, it conditions other things. If consciousness did not cease, there would be no possibility of a further moment of consciousness.
Right.
Yeah. And so your task is simply to rest the mind in the moment, content to note what arises, a little bit of study to get these 6 sensory fields properly cemented in your mind, and then, but not even try to find the sensory fields, just note whatever comes up next. Seriously, that is the way to come to realize all of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, cooking a meal becomes something really quite extraordinary, because you get to the point where you're seeing that the choice, the decision, the intention, the volition, all these various components of mind that go to make up literally you just picking up a fork or, putting some flour in a bowl. And then you're watching the cascade of the flour as it goes into the bowl, and you think it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And just the sound of running water from the tap just fills you with wonder. And, you just slice open a tomato and look at the pattern, and you're just blown away by the sheer, how could any of this be even happeningness of it? Because we take it all for granted, because we're all busy trying to do other things. But when you strip it all back and you actually look, the sheer marvel of what is actually unfolding in even the most mundane tasks, you just wake up.
Okay. Very helpful to put a cap on all of that. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Lovely to see you, Ellen. Sarah.
Hello, thank you for that wonderful description. I was just, while kind of ruminating on earlier questions, I wondered, and it would be just nice to hear the way you might say it is, the whole thing about dogmatism, etc. There is that phrase that is used a lot, and I don't know the Pali, but there's this phrase that mindfulness is the one way. So one could see how that can be twisted to think, the Buddha's teaching is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the one way. Therefore, the Buddha teaching is the one way to understanding. But, would you say it's like mindfulness is the one way, and any spiritual way will be doing that, will be coming soon.
No, I won't even go that far, because I haven't trod those paths. I can only talk about the path I've trodden, and doff my cap and give my respect to other authentic ways and other, authentic traditions, because they might employ ways that I would never have conceived of, just completely outside of my field of experience. So no, I think what the Buddha means is like, you can't ignore your way to enlightenment. And what is the corrective for ignoring is mindfulness. It's mindfulness is turning your attention to something, whereas ignoring is turning your attention away from it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's very simple again, isn't it? And just again, a real worry, a warning against being intellectual.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but with the caveat that what I'd like to offer you is a very, very simple sort of visual reference, like you've got the right hemisphere of the brain that deals with experience, and the left hemisphere that deals with intellect. Imagine the right hemisphere as being a very big circle, and the left hemisphere as being a small circle. So the intellect is a small circle within the large circle of experience. And so we experience, which is the large circle, we give the experience to the intellect, the little circle, in order to do the necessary reflective part. And all being well, the left side of our brains, the intellectual part, gives it back to the experiential side again. Yeah. And so in meditation, what that means is we rest in the moment, content to note whatever arises. And that's the perfect balance between the right and left hemispheres. So intellect does have its place, but it's a very small little place in the grand scheme of things. But we do need it. We need it for noting. We need it for wise reflection. Yeah. Everything's got its place. And it's just that people mistakenly give too much emphasis to the wrong bit and not enough. Or you get the situation where it's all experience and no reflection. Yeah. So somebody who practices samatha meditation but doesn't reflect on their experience at all just goes into deep states of calm and has the most extraordinary, brilliant experiences, but there's absolutely no reflection going on. Yeah. So it's they're right braining it like crazy, not left braining it enough. So if they reflected subsequent to being in that deep state of calm, they could see that deep state of calm and all the components that go to make it up are indeed transient, in which case they're doing the vipassana part as well. But the tendency is, because it's such an extraordinarily lovely experience, you just enjoy that resonance for the rest of your day, and you don't actually bother to reflect much. So we need both, but in the right amounts. Is that clear, Sarah?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for your questions. That's the hour went very quickly. I hope that the things that we talked about were helpful for you. I am available. If you're local to the centre, you're very welcome to come and arrange to come and have a chat. If you're further afield, then I can do interviews on Zoom and various other video services. But so I am available. You're very welcome to get in touch if you'd like to have a chat. Other than that, lovely to see everyone, and we'll meet again in a couple of weeks. Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Hilda.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Hilda.